I mean, the whole situation, everything about it is just so fucked. I mean, there's everything about that whole thing is so fucked. And after seeing that series, it's even more fucked. This is a difficult one to really comment on.
Is it about the fact I'm out of chocolate?
No, it's about Dahmer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dahmer, yes.
The
guy loved chocolate.
He loves something, but not chocolate. Well, he kind of loved chocolate. I'm going to stop. Anyway, Dahmer, the monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Terrible name, by the way. Should have just called it Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. No, it's called Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. It's a very redundant name. Title. Well, let's get the good out of the way first. Netflix's Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, just had the streaming service's most watched week 1 for a new series on record. Dahmer earned a whopping 196.2 million hours viewed in its first week of availability, which was really just 5 days. Netflix's number 2 series last week was Season 2 of Fate, the Winx Saga, which hauled in 60.97 million hours viewed in its second week on the charts, and its first full week of availability. So it was actually out longer than Dahmer was. I just finished Dahmer last night. I watched it over the course of about 3 days, 3 nights. I was alive when this happened, and I remember. I was a kid, so I don't remember like every single detail. But I remember like a lot of the stuff that it was depicting. I was like, yeah, I remember. I had I was old enough. I would have been 12 when it all happened, or when it all came out. And then as it went on for the next few years, so early preteens and teens. So I was aware of the situation enough to look back at this and have a pretty good memory of some of these things. So I thought, because this is made by actually someone we talked about last week, Ryan
Murphy.
Yeah, Ryan Murphy. And I know you had displayed your displeasure with his stuff in the past. I thought this was good. I'm not gonna lie, it was very interesting. Now we're gonna talk about something about that in a minute, but I thought that overall the show was really interesting. It's a tough watch at times. Some of the stuff with the victims, and I don't mean it's not really nearly as violent as you would think. There is some violence in it, but it actually alludes to violence more than anything. You hear a lot of stuff. You don't see as much. It's not nearly as gory as you would think it was, especially considered for its subject matter. It's more about the people. It's about Jeffrey Dahmer himself, but it's also about a lot of the other people surrounding him, like his neighbor, who was in the news quite a bit, and some of the victims. It really zeroes in on some of the victims for like whole episodes, and the victims' families, especially closer to the end of the first half of the show is a bit more focused on him, and then as the show goes on, it starts to focus on other people in his life, like his father, like his whole episode. There's one episode that is about one of his victims, and it follows him around. I don't want to give anything away, but and that was a great. That was a really good storytelling tactic, because it got you very invested in this one person. I mean, the guy killed 17 people. You can't tell 17 individual stories, but they got you very invested in a few of them, but this one in particular got you very invested in them, so when the unfortunate inevitable end happened, it was all that more impactful. But what I remember that it was showing seemed like it was all accurate enough. You know, there was nothing that I was like, that just didn't happen, or
Yeah.
And what I know of the Jeffrey Dahmer, not that I'm an expert in Jeffrey Dahmer, but what I do know about him. Now, given what I just said, I like the show. I would recommend people watch it, but just know its subject matter, and knowing that it's all true, and it is pretty brutally in your face. I never felt like the show glorified Dahmer himself, or anybody. It just was telling a story. I never felt sympathetic for his character, but you do, obviously, in following a character for 10 hour-long episodes. He's not in every one of them, but for a good portion of that, you do get to know at least this character that's being portrayed to you on screen. So I never really felt bad for him, though, especially knowing the fact of us knowing that being more or less recent-ish, knowing that this person did these things and having seen the real person and gone through that. I don't know. I don't know if I was supposed to, but I could never muster up any kind of sympathy or empathy for this person.
Yeah.
Is more. I felt more sympathetic and empathetic for the people around him, his own family and the other families of his victims, of course. I felt sympathy for them. He's. I'm not gonna get into what the guy was. He was something else. He is truly one of the scariest people ever. Scarier than somebody like John Wayne Gacy, who's in the show as well, because that guy was just fucking crazy. You see him, he looks... Jeffrey Dahmer, I never got the idea that he was crazy. He was just evil. I mean,
Yeah.
he even... Yeah. Anyway, none of that really matters here. Check it out. It's on Netflix. I thought it was a good watch, though difficult at times. Well, following the show's premiere, Eric Perry, who's a cousin of Jeffrey Dahmer's victim, Earl Lindsey, took to social media to voice his disgust with Netflix and the creative choices in Dahmer. Perry said on Twitter, "I'm not telling anyone what to watch. I know true crime media is huge right now. But if you're actually curious about the victims, my family, the Isbells, are pissed about this show. It's re-traumatizing over and over again for what? How many movies, shows, documentaries do we need?" Perry further pointed to the lack of sensitivity towards the living, many of whom are depicted in the series without their knowledge, let alone consent. Because the information is all public record, there was no obligation or requirement for Ryan Murphy Productions to contact those involved in the story, so his family found out when everyone else did. Perry said, "Recreating my cousin having an emotional breakdown in court in the face of the man who tortured and murdered her brother is wild." The show's production team has defended the project, saying that the goal was never to humanize Dahmer, but instead to show the perspective of the victims and explain the ways that race and sexuality informed the killings. Okay, so this is a tough one because I don't feel like the show was ever sensationalizing the character of Jeffrey Dahmer, and I do feel like the show did actually, because nobody's really going out there saying that the show is false in what it's saying. Nobody is saying that, oh, it's telling a bunch of lies. I will give it that. I do feel like the show did at times kind of shine a light on the other people, because you hear Jeffrey Dahmer, you can name his name all day, but people can't really name the victims' names, and that's kind of sad. And they can't name the people that were around him in his vicinity or whatever that he affected. I do feel like this show, especially the second half of the first half, does focus, like I said, a lot on him, but the second half of the show, the final 4 or 5 episodes, focuses on just all these other people, a lot more than just him. Actually, there's whole episodes where he hardly is even in it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a good thing. However, on the flip side of that, I was talking with someone else about this. I get it, man. And this same thing about movies and books and things like that being made about Jeffrey Dahmer, made about these victims, comes up in the movie. It happened in real life. And people were sued and lost money and all that. The proceeds of certain things about him and the families were sent to the families, even though other people were making it, court judgments and whatnot. So this comes up in the movie as well. It's a real difficult. This is not a hard one. This is an impossible situation. How do you justify this? Do I think that this is a story that should be? Yeah, because this shit don't need to be forgotten. And I think that the show does a good job of like saying, "Hey, remember these people. Remember the people that were affected by him." But if you are one of those people that was affected by him, or the family of these people, of course, do you want to see that? Do you want to hear that name ever again? Hell no, I get it. But people are interested in this. People want to know. Why? Because this person, this human being, and the things he did were so crazy and out of the norm and insane. We want to know. People can't help that they're curious. They're interested to know why and what happened. So I don't know. I don't really necessarily, me myself personally, and I want to get your view on it, even though you haven't. Have you seen the show?
No, I don't watch Ryan Murphy shows.
No,
I refuse. Yeah, no, I have not seen it. No.
I will say, because I've seen some of American Horror Story. It's a different vibe from that. It's a very different vibe. I mean, I know that was his other big one. But anyway, I think that the show, who made it all aside, I don't think that there was anything wrong with the show being made. And I didn't feel as if it exploited, in at least an overt way, was exploitative of anyone. If nothing else, I felt like it was. I do feel like they were trying to explain the ways of race and sexuality inform the killings, put the perspective on the victims, like they said. But then I also get why these people are just like, how many, what did he say? Movies, shows, documentaries do we need? Because there's already been a movie made with Hawkeye. Anyway, there was a movie made. It wasn't a very good movie. It was an okay movie made some years ago where he played Dahmer. I didn't think this was bad, but I get where these people are coming from. And I just wanted to kind of get somebody else's view of, like, what do you think about this? Take the Ryan Murphy part out. Because I know you got feelings about Ryan Murphy.
Yeah. No, I am a huge disponent of Ryan Murphy. I hate that guy so much. Well,
he did. I'll say that I don't know how involved with this he was. This was a good, as far as storytelling and watching it and all that, and the fact that it seems like it was fairly accurate, fairly honest. I thought this was a good show.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you liked it, that's more power to you. It's a difficult thing to broach because you understand what the families are feeling. They're disgusted by this, but it's also like you and I both watched Ted K, which is about Ted Kaczynski and the ideas behind that. Yeah. It's the same thing here. Like there was Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which had Michael Rooker, and there's all these stories that you'll watch that are based off serial killers, and unfortunately, people sometimes they'll change the name for protectivity and stuff like that. But I do feel like let me ask you this: did they get permission to use these people's names, or they just said, "Fuck it, we're going to do whatever we want"?
Well, I don't know the whole story there, but I know that at least some of the people know they weren't consulted.
Yeah.
Them not knowing that it was in production, I don't know. Because this movie did come, they didn't do a lot of promotional work for this movie.
No, it literally just came out.
Yeah, they just slid it out there and then it blew up as to like #1. Whether they knew it was coming or not, I know this one guy, Eric Perry, the cousin of one of the victims, he says he didn't know. And what he was talking about, his cousin, by the way, there's a scene, and you can see the actual, in the court, after Dahmer before he was sentenced, as they do in these types of cases, they allow the victims' families or people affected by it to come up and give say a piece and plead to the judge what they think should happen, more or less. And all the different family members came up there. His cousin, I don't see her name here, she had an outburst in court. She lost, and that didn't really. I remember that, and they showed, or no, they didn't show that. They reenacted that, and it was very close because I've seen videos online when I was looking into the story. It is like very close to that scene. I didn't feel like they were overdoing it or anything. That is what she did, and I don't blame her. She lost her shit, and she was like, "Fuck you, Jeffrey Dahmer! I'll fucking kill you!" And she like started going after him across the courtroom and all that. That's the emotional breakdown he was talking about that his cousin had. But since it was all public record, there's no obligation or requirement for them to consult them. Whether they all, because there's a lot of people, a lot of families and family members and stuff like that that are depicted in the film. Mm-hmm. I don't know if none of them were or just this particular guy. I have no idea. Because he, as far as I know, I'm not saying he wasn't in it. He wasn't a primary. He wasn't the one. He's even talking about it was his cousin that he had an issue with what was going on. But I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's weird because you want to be well, that's the thing. You want to be respectful of these people, but you still have to tell a story, and whether it's such a slippery slope. Do you tell a story and do it your own way, or do you have people come in and talk about it? And it's hard to And
Well,
this
there's
thing,
no
like,
way that this isn't traumatizing.
Yeah.
I get where they're saying it's re-traumatizing all over again. And that, I don't know, man. It's hard. Because I don't see a problem with these stories being told. Because if you say that this story shouldn't have been told, then you got to point to every single real life story that could have traumatized somebody and say it shouldn't be told either. Because the same situation came up with that movie that you and I like, Pain and Gain, took place in where you live. That was even more recent, and apparently the families of people involved in that were all up in arms. Now that was a much more stylized take on that whole situation too, from what I understand, and people were all up in arms about that. But I mean, in anything that anybody would still be alive for, I mean, you got things about, you know, World War II criminals and stuff like that, and I mean, where is the line? Where do you cut it off and say, okay, this can be told and this can't be told? I understand it's traumatizing, and that's terrible, but I don't know what the happy medium is, because people want to know. They're like, how could somebody possibly do this? We can't. I don't think people should feel like ashamed for being curious, because this is a fucking crazy, fucked up story. I don't know, but
who knows? It's such a, like you said, it's such a weird thing to even kind of broach on that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did not expect to get an answer to this today, because I know that there isn't a right answer. There's just not. I mean, I hate for someone to be traumatized or re-traumatized and have to hear about that and go through it, but I don't think that this movie not existing is going to change that. I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not one of the victims' families, and I don't mean to be insensitive in any way, but I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer to this day is such a well-known name because of what he did. I mean, references are made about him all over the place. So, I mean, I don't think that this movie this movie releasing or not would not have changed it. I mean, maybe it's going to drum up a bit more publicity about it for a little while, but I don't think that would have changed. His name is so well known that you're going to hear it at some points out there in the world, and that's got to be painful. I get that sucks, but you know, it's a catch-22 all around. But I will say that I mean, for what it is, for what it's worth, I mean, I hate that it's hurting people, but it was a very interesting show, and from what I could tell, for the most part at least, it is it's just telling facts. I mean, more or less, it's dramatized, of course, to a degree, but it is, you know, it does not glorify the character. And if you got Netflix and you have any type of interest in that true crime stuff or anything, I would suggest, you know, you guys check it out, because it's an interesting type of show. But I don't know. There's not a right answer to this. But anyway, let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you think that this type of show, these type of true life dramas or crime dramas should be allowed to be made? Should the families have to sign off? Because the other thing on that is, if the families had to sign off on it, I don't think any of these would ever get made. They just wouldn't, because a lot of family members are like, no, I don't want this put out there.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get I get that too. So it's like, you know, where's the line? What's the answer to this? Let us know in the comments below, because I certainly don't have